The Unshackled Waves, episode 229.
Broadcasting from Melbourne, Australia, this is The Unshackled Waves with Tim Wills, brought to you by theunshackled.net.
Hello everyone, great to have your company. It's been over a week now since the voters in New South Wales went to the polls to decide its parliament and government for the next 4 years, after a horror last week from Labor opposition leader Michael Daley, where comments he made claiming Asians are replacing Australians in Sydney, and a costings memory blank in the People's Forum allowed Liberal Premier Gladys Berejiklian to sneak back into majority government and be the first female premier elected in New South Wales in her own right. Other notable outcomes in the election were the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party taking 2 more seats off the National Party in the lower house, taking their total to 3. In the upper house, despite all the smearing of minor parties, more than a quarter of voters voted for a party other than the coalition, Labor and the Greens, ensuring a diverse crossbench for the next 4 years. The Unshackled reacted on election night with our special election live stream, but there have been a lot more results confirmed since then and further political developments from both winners and losers. Our senior editor Damien Ferri was with us for the final hour of the live stream, so I thought it'd be good to have him back on to wrap up the New South Wales election results. Damien, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Now, it seems a week after the election, the narrative is from the mainstream media and the commentariat is that Gladys Berejiklian, she's pulled off one of the great political escapes. She's managed to scrape back in with a majority government, and even the conservative commentators are saying how great it is that a woman in New South Wales has been elected premier in her own right, and the fact that she is a single childless female premier shows that the Liberals don't have a woman problem. They put a woman forward based on her record, and the voters responded. They have no problem voting for a woman on merit, and she was just the better candidate on paper than Michael Daley, who collapsed in the last week. It seems like these Liberals, they're trying to have it both ways, saying like, look at this great achievement for women, but we don't care about gender that much, we just put forward a good candidate.
Yeah, that's modern day conservatism, it seems. I mean, the Labor and Liberal parties will attack each other when they can, and they don't really seem to have principles. I mean, especially with the Liberals being on the right, being people that aren't supposed to be, your identity politic virtue signalers, and they still act like the left does. I mean, exactly the same way. So they'll basically promote this as such a marvellous victory, and that it's such a great thing that, like you said, that she was a single childless female, which really...
from a migrant background, how could I forget that?
Yeah, well, any normal person wouldn't even really raise that as an issue, or even say, well, look, I mean, if you won with that sort of candidate, I mean, why even, rave on about it and make it look like it, that's something I would assume the left would do, really push it and make it such an issue. I mean, Gladys didn't perform as well as she could have. I mean, it was a scrape-in, just similar to how Turnbull scraped in last time around. And I mean, with these Liberals that are at the left of the party, I mean, if they win, it's only because the people don't really support them as such, but it's that they hate the Labor Party more. And this is what happens. Either when there is these kind of leaders in power in the Liberal Party, that normally the voters give them either a hung parliament or just a narrow scrape through, because they don't want to make it seem that they're really supportive of this leader, But the Labor Party would be a lot worse, and that's why it was a narrow scrape in the first place.
Their coalition actually lost 4 seats. As we said, they just scraped home with 48 seats, the Labor Party on 36, with others growing to 9. And because it was set from the beginning as a really close election, that it was most likely scenario was a hung parliament with either party putting together a minority government, because the expectations of Gladys and the Liberals was so low. The fact that she was able to get it over the line in the end with not just a majority of one, but a majority of two, that was considered a grand victory, and they're now considering her a modern day Liberal hero.
Yeah, but you have to really look at things here. I mean, the New South Wales state is more right-leaning than left, unlike, say, Victoria and South Australia. New South Wales, along with Queensland, Western Australia, are a little bit more on the right than the other states, and therefore Liberals perform a lot better than the Labor Party in this state. And that's why they've won 3 times in a row. I mean, when you look at... for instance, when Barry O'Farrell won, I mean, it was a landslide victory, and even Baird got a better, victory than Gladys did. So at the end of the day, you have to really look at it from a broad point of view here. Look at the past. I mean, you know, someone like Barry could have been seen as a modern-day Liberal hero, but Gladys, lost, along with Mike Baird, a lot of seats because they just didn't provide that stability and that ideology that people really was fixated with. You know, I mean, they just got home in the end. And apart from people in the state being right-leaning, the Labor Party, there was no mood for change in the state. I mean, at the end of the day, the Labor Party didn't provide a case as to why they should have been voted in. And even federally, I mean, as much as people make it, you know, out to be a Labor Shorten landslide, I don't think that's going to happen either, because at the same time, Bill Shorten isn't a really popular leader, and the Liberals have an immigration agenda that they're going to push, and also the budget into surplus. So at the end of the day, what have Labor got to offer? I mean, this is what it is. They're going to not only scare a lot of older voters, retirees, but they're not providing a reason why people need to vote for them. And I think that it shows federally, especially in the state of New South Wales, that you'll get a very similar result in the federal election, that the Liberals will still maintain the seats number that they currently have, more or less.
Yes, it's given the federal Liberals quite a boost, and there was an Essential poll released this week which showed that the coalition was now only 48 to 52 behind, and we saw Scott Morrison on election night give the warm-up act at the election night party there for Gladys, saying that, you know, I expect here to be back here in 2 months to celebrate a federal election victory. And Gladys said, we're going to do all that we can, ScoMo, to make sure you're re-elected. And it does prove that this election, that the Liberal brand is not toxic, but at least in New South Wales, and this election is going to be lost for the coalition in states such as Victoria and Western Australia. Victoria, pretty much the baseball bats are out for the Liberals, where it's predicted that there's going to be a wipeout with perhaps only 1 or 2 Liberal MPs surviving, and it's... this leads on to sort of what we saw this week with the Liberals wedged on One Nation preferences, which, of course, we saw the Al Jazeera documentary, or should we say elaborate entrapment, lying, duplicitous documentary, where they basically concocted a situation where they got One Nation to be attracted to getting hypothetical donations from the NRA. And by the end of the week, we also saw Pauline Hanson on camera raise doubts, suggest that Port Arthur massacre in 1996 was a false flag for gun control. And so Scott Morrison came out after and said, we're going to be putting One Nation below the Labor Party. And that just sort of that whole wedge seemed to evaporate sort of any momentum that they had after the New South Wales election.
firstly, on the difference in the state issues, I think you're right. Victoria having a Liberal wipeout might not be a bad thing, because I think most of them tend to lean left anyway. So I mean, that could be a good way to drain the swamp, so to speak, and you know, be able to next time round maybe get some decent candidates. WA, yeah, you know, I mean, that won't be too bad. Queensland, I mean, you got to remember Queensland, you know, a lot of people don't like this whole anti-coal push. It's going to be a very interesting, an interesting state to watch, I think. I mean, that's really where it's going to be, where it can win or lose an election. Regarding One Nation, not only did what happened with this so-called scandal not really affect them, it probably gave them some good publicity. And I mean, any publicity is good publicity. So they've been in the spotlight. A lot of people, you know, just hearing about Pauline Hanson. I mean, the people that are going to vote for him are going to vote for him anyway, and the people that don't like him don't like him. So it hasn't really changed any views. And I think, you know, these people that spent so much money in all these years trying to come up with something, they've really failed. And it's only, you know, made the ABC look really bad and biased. Also, regarding One Nation, I seen a tweet from Mark Latham only a couple of days ago, I think it was, and he basically said that the Liberals, you know, cucking out, so to speak, and saying that they're going to put One Nation last, they've pretty much lost the election just based on that. I mean, yeah. if you really think about it, I mean, there's so many seats that, you know, they would benefit with One Nation preferences, and for them to, you know, say One Nation are worse, you know, than Labor. And I mean, they did hesitate with the Greens, and I only think they did that because, you know, if they said that they were worse than the Greens as well, I mean, there would be a massive backlash and people would think that they were insane. But it's bad enough saying that, you know, Labor are a better party than One Nation. I mean, if they were smart and had some sort of common sense, they would use One Nation in the same way as Labor used the Greens. I mean, you don't see Labor coming out and saying, oh, the extremist Greens, and trying to, you know, push away from them. And Sky News actually came out, and a few of the presenters on Sky actually mentioned that. Why aren't the Labor Party being forced to basically explain themselves as to why they always support and take preferences off the Greens, and don't, you know, highlight the Greens as an extremist party, which they are. I mean, they're a lot more extreme than One Nation, I would say. I mean, when you really look down as to what their policy is, I mean, they're absolute crazy, yet nobody raises this normally, and they just gets, you know, it's just bound to be, oh yeah, Labor and the Greens are in a great relationship, and it's to be expected. Then why isn't it to be expected at the same time that Liberal would somehow preference another right of centre party? I mean, wouldn't that normally compute and make sense in politics? I mean, to put a left-wing party higher than a right-wing party, why?
Well, I mean, the media have always had it in for One Nation since over its 20-plus years in existence, and of course it's a legitimate question to ask. Well, if the Liberals are supposed to dissociate from One Nation, why don't Labor from the Greens? But that's because the same amount of media scrutiny is not placed on the Greens, apart from that in News Corp. But this is what the left is better at, is keeping its sort of wacky internal things most of the time in-house. And so even though there's a lot of extremists in the Greens, they're a lot more disciplined than sort of these fracturing that happens in One Nation. And so the media is more able to go, see, look at that crazy group of people over there. You know, you got to get away from them.
They've also got a lot of contacts up high. That's the problem. I mean, you know, One Nation, I mean, parties like One Nation, the Caddis Party, Fraser Annings, I mean, these people are just normal people. You know, you don't have these bureaucrats, you don't have these, you know, middle, upper class kind of, you know, yuppies over in the cities. I mean, they haven't got those contacts. They're just normal people. And that's why they haven't got the pull that the Greens do, unfortunately. They just haven't got those contacts up high, and that obviously helps them a lot. I mean, when you have a party that didn't denounce a person like Tom Rao that, was someone that was advocating necrophilia and bestiality. I mean, how the hell can somebody like that still be a candidate without being denounced? And how is that not, front page news all over the TV and everything, damaging that party? I mean, that party could have been finished with such views. I mean, what else could they say that's more extreme than that? I mean, blaming One Nation for, wanting, gun laws to be relaxed is somehow worse than advocating bestiality and necrophilia. I mean, this is insane. I mean, actually, I have to put it down. One good thing is that at least both Anning and the LDP have come out and not cucked out on that issue, and have actually said that they definitely support much more relaxed gun laws, which is good. They were able to stick with their guns. So I definitely respect them for that. But I just can't believe the hypocrisy here and how the media don't raise these issues. It is insane, absolutely insane.
And you mentioned what Mark Latham put out, and of course Pauline Hanson said in a defiant press conference, said to Morrison, "You're a fool. You've handed the keys to the lodge to Shorten, Di Natale and the CFMEU, and One Nation is now going to preference against the sitting member in every seat," which is what they did at the last federal election and in the Queensland state election, and we know how well that worked out for the LNP there. But it's interesting that the people that are pushing to put One Nation last where the Liberals are set to get wiped out. Tim Wilson from Victoria, he's been pushing to put One Nation last, and Colin Barnett, former Premier from WA, has said that preferencing One Nation at the last state election was the worst mistake that we ever made. So when facing an electoral wipeout, their strategy is to cuck out.
Exactly, and I don't think it was a bad move from Colin Barnett. I just think it was an absolute media showdown and an attack that's basically made it an issue. I mean, if the media didn't make it an issue, it wouldn't have been an issue because, like I said, I mean, One Nation preferencing the Liberals really helped them. Otherwise, their preferences are a 50-50 split because you have One Nation appealing to both the left and the right for different reasons. A really old school sort of Labor kind of mindset, and also a conservative sort of right-wing mindset of the modern day. So they appeal to, both crowds, and that's why they have a lot of support. Now, how silly must you be to be able to basically, not want to deal with them? It's crazy. In regards to, you were mentioning the people in seats that were really pushing against One Nation. Well, what can I say? At the end of the day, it would be good to see people like Tim Wilson out of the picture. Regarding what One Nation should do with their preferences, I don't think they should only focus on preferencing against sitting members. I think what they should do is that the good people that are in the Liberal Party, the ones that are conservative, like, people like, George Christensen's in the LNP and all those kind of guys, they should actually preference them, but then preference against all of the left-leaning ones that, are really heavily against One Nation. So, I mean, this is something that I think they should do. So then at least in the Liberal Party, the people that do get in are decent, and the ones that do leave, and that will change the party, because then once the Conservatives become the majority again, it will then push it further to the right, which obviously is going to help everyone's ideologically out. We're going to be able to get more of a better right-of-centre party representing us. One thing that also has to be said is the Nationals don't want any part of that deal, because they know that it's going to be a wipeout for them if they do. The Nationals are really heavily against it. I heard Barnaby Joyce speak about this, and he said, we don't want any part of this Liberal Party putting One Nation down. We're only going to, decide on the candidates and all that sort of thing, which in a way is basically saying, we're not going to preference Labor ahead of One Nation. So,
I remember Barnaby Joyce is like, there's so many, options of who to put last. I mean, you can't just say put One Nation last. And then he said, what do you do if there's a candidate called Adolf Hitler? Where do you put him?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, I mean, the Nationals aren't stupid. I mean, if the Nationals went along with this, they would be finished, absolutely finished. I mean, if the One Nation preferenced Labor in the country seats against the Nationals, and also preferenced, parties like the Shooters and all of them. The Nationals will just lose in a wipeout. There would be no way that they would be able to get across the line here. And they know that. The Liberals, it's very easy for a Liberal in an inner city seat to, say, put One Nation last, when One Nation, even if they have a candidate, which most likely they wouldn't in an inner city seat, would only probably poll, a couple of percentage points and that's it, which wouldn't really affect the balance. But going in the regional areas and, in other areas, southwest Sydney, Central Coast, parts of Queensland, obviously, big vote there, rural Victoria, parts of Western Australia and so forth. At the end of the day, the Nationals are finished even if it was a Liberal candidate over in these areas where One Nation polls high, if they pull that sort of rhetoric, they're not going to be able to make it. I mean, it's easy for someone in the city to say that, where One Nation polls nothing, but over where they do poll in big numbers, and it also shows that people in the city really couldn't care less for the people in the country. I mean, it really shows that divide of that two different election strategies, and that's what we saw in New South Wales. We were facing an election in the city and an election in the bush.
Let's go back to the state election result. Now, the Labor leader, Michael Daley, his political career is over, and he's pretty much been called all but a racist for his comments on Asian migrants with PhDs replacing local Australians. They of course won't come out and call him a racist, but they know that those comments, given Sydney's demographics, cost them dearly. And you had power brokers such as Graham Richardson and Sam Dastyari saying he was finished. Daley said on election night he was going to stay as leader. Then he said he was going to step down as leader but recontest the eventual leadership ballot. And then he later said that he wouldn't recontest. And so and this is where we go back to the Liberals attacking Labor from the left. They're basically saying that Labor put up a racist for Premier, and this is a indication that the electorate will not vote for racists.
Yeah, I mean, there was only one seat that really caused effect over in Kogarah, and I mean, apart from that, it wasn't as big of an issue as they made it out to be. Daley, he basically said it as it was, which is very hard for a Labor Party person to ever witness, them saying it. And, I mean, Luke Foley faced the same sort of criticisms when he was leader. He made a statement about white flight, but it wasn't enough to actually boot him out of the leadership. It was obviously the sexual assault allegations that was. But, I mean, one thing that really makes me laugh about this is that the left don't really, make a big drama out of it. I mean, I'm sure if someone on the right said that, it would be, headline news. It would be massive. It would have been so massive, calling, racist remarks. But I heard a lot of Labor leaders say that the remarks were unfortunate. I mean, playing it down. And this is the kind of stuff that I really hate listening to, when I hear
the left, they will never throw their own under the bus, feed them to the media wars. What we've sort of seen with Daley is they know that the comments by the left standards, they were racist, and the Greens, I think that's one of the things that sort of saved their vote, because we know how much of a mess the New South Wales Greens have been. When Daley came out with those comments, the Greens went on the attack, and it was probably the main reason why the Greens were able to retain all of their seats rather than the wipeout that happened in Victoria. They were able to get some of that left vote back because Daley was seen as pandering to xenophobia.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. But in saying that, I mean, really, what did Daley say that was racist? I mean, he basically came out and said that the Chinese people in particular were coming over here and in great numbers and taking people's jobs. I mean, is there really anything of a lie in that? I mean, it might be something that could be seen as racist if you want to see it that way, but this is what's happening. I mean, if you're in a situation where you've got so many people that are unemployed, yet even when there's job creation, you're bringing in people from overseas, which increases the demand. I mean, what do? It outruns the supply. I mean, people at the end of the day shouldn't be coming here unless there's good reason for them to come here. I mean, if we need them like we needed them post-World War II, of course, that's great. But at this situation where there's people already unemployed, struggling to find work, I mean, wouldn't it make sense to make sure that they were given a job first priority? And then if it was ever a case where there was more work than people, then you could always look for other people overseas. I mean, this is what it's all about, really. I mean, economically, it's not viable. And not to mention, obviously, the cultural aspects, which many people would argue too. The funny thing about Daley is that he's actually stepped down. And by stepping down, having the interim leader at the moment, Penny Sharp, but in saying that, I mean, Labor Party doesn't really have, I mean, she's only a temporary leader, so they haven't really got a proper opposition leader at the moment. I mean, imagine ScoMo going to an election and saying to people in the New South Wales state that Labor Party doesn't even have a proper leader in place. I mean, in New South Wales, and Daley was too gutless to even stay on. I mean, he didn't even have to really say much. He could have remained in the shadows in the background and nothing would have been a big drama. But for him to actually step down and go through an election campaign federally where there's no Labor Party leader, I mean, this is unheard of. I just can't believe it.
And the reason why that Penny Sharp is going to be the interim leader until after the federal election is because New South Wales Labor has adopted the same leadership rules as the federal Labor Party. So there's going to be a ballot of Labor Party members. And so Bill Shorten has said, I don't want this leadership contest and our members being distracted while there's a federal election going on. And so, yeah, they are left in this situation where Penny Sharp, she's in the upper house. She can't even go up against Gladys Berejiklian in question time. So it's a really bizarre situation. And I think they're just going to hope that with the federal election going to be called next week, that everyone will just forget about state politics and things will be just focused federally.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, the Liberals will mention it because it's an important aspect of, in a way of, giving a blow to the Labor Party. I mean, if they want to make sure that the Liberals will retain a lot of their seats in New South Wales, which I think they will anyway, because like I said, it's a right of centre state. And unless they really do anything to infuriate people, I mean, they normally have a decent number of seats here. They have to mention it. I mean, I would believe personally they will. I mean, I don't see them not mentioning it. I mean, it's an issue. I mean, the Labor Party really, they should have done one of two things: either rolled him now and chosen a leader, so then they had a proper leader in place, or even just, like I said, leave Daley in place in the background, and when the federal election was over, then they could have rolled him, but I mean, doing what they did now, I think was a really bad decision on their behalf. I'm shocked, to be honest.
Let's have a look at the leadership candidates. There's Chris Minns, who's the re-elected Cogra MP. Now, he is apparently likely to pursue progressive policy agenda, such as being for pill testing at music festivals, which was a big issue during the summer, campaign against the lockout laws, and wanting to engage more with the multicultural community. As you mentioned, Cogra was one of the seats that was affected by Daley's Asian comments.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, when you have people in major parties, they will, spin things away that are going to benefit them in their particular seats. So, I mean, if you're in a small L Liberal seat, then that's what you're going to pursue. I mean, That's just the way it is, you know. I mean, if you're in Cogra, obviously you're going to be pandering to the Chinese vote. If you're in Strathfield, I mean, Strathfield is in a city, so I mean, I wouldn't call that a really sort of conservative area. I mean, there would be conservatism within it, but I mean, anywhere near heading towards close to the city, you're going to get a little bit more of a progressive sort of look at things. So they can get away with it there. They're not going to be able to get away with that sort of crap over in Penrith, in other areas that the Liberals hold, in, say, for instance, Camden, you know, even down southeast towards areas like Sutherland and so forth. I mean, those kind of areas, you can't get away with that kind of agenda, you know. I mean, it's focused on where they are, and it might be smart, but like I said, it's not principled, you know. They have to be united against a particular ideology, a particular cause. And when there's so many splinters in that party, so many people with different views and different agendas, it makes it very difficult. I mean, it's very easy to go into a seat and basically be everybody's friend, but in reality, you're deceiving the people. You're not being legit. You have to sometimes say things that people are going to disagree with, you know, and that's why politicians, you know, that are outspoken, like Anning, like Lionel, like, you know, Katter and so forth. I mean, these kind of people, you know, garner a lot of respect because whether you like or hate them, at the end of the day, you can't call them a fake, you know. I mean, they are who they are. People know where they stand, and a lot of people have respect for people like that.
The other likely candidate is Jodie Mackay, who's the recently re-elected MP for Strathfield, another multicultural area, but she is considered less likely to have the numbers. And it just reminds me, again, going back to the woman thing, is that Labor Party, they always give the hospital pass to a female premier, but I don't think in any state or territory, to my knowledge, they've ever given the job of opposition leader to a woman, apart from Queensland, Anastasia Palaszczuk, when she was the only one of 8 MPs left. Meanwhile, the Liberal Party have had several female opposition leaders.
I think they may have had somebody in Tasmania. Is that correct? They might have, and also
yes,
the ACT.
Yes, recently, Tasmania.
Yeah,
Rebecca White.
But I mean, yeah, you are right. So I understand. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I mean, I really hate when people have to do these sort of low blows in politics. I mean, it should be about just going out there saying, this is who we are, this is what we're going to do for you, and that's it. I mean, it shouldn't be about all these sort of games. And the major parties, that's what they do, you know. I mean, it's all about winning. And if they would come up with something that they know would win votes, even though it contradicts their ideology and their principles, then they would do it. I mean, that's how, you know, piss weak these people are, you know. I mean, they would do anything just to win and stay on longer and, you know, just to have a cushy job. And you know, it's a career. It's not going in there and actually wanting to do best for the country and your area and wanting to, you know, change things for the better. It's all about career, you know, to these people. These people have never had a real job, most of them. They've either been staffers or union officials, or they've been, you know, lawyers. That's usually the 3 sort of, you know, positions of people that you find as a politician, especially on the left. You never have any small business owners or any sort of, you know, tradies or anyone, you know, especially on the left, you know. So, I mean, this is what we're up against, you know. It's the kind of people we're facing.
We've talked about the major parties in the New South Wales election, but let's have a look at probably the most successful minor party at the election, and that was the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. They won 2 more seats off the National Party in the southwest of the state. During the last parliament, they won a by-election in Orange after a backlash over the Baird government's proposed greyhound racing ban and also council amalgamation. And it also seemed that the post-Christchurch gun fear campaign didn't work. Rural voters were satisfied enough in the southwest of the state to elect 2 more Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party MPs, giving them 3 in the lower house. And also another issue was dissatisfaction with the Murray-Darling Basin plan. It seemed to be benefiting cotton farmers in the north of the state who are still voting for the National party. But it seems to me the shooters, they've been the quiet achievers in the minor party scene. They, to date, have avoided the internal troubles that's plagued other minor parties, such as One Nation and Clive Palmer's parties. There's never been any rogue MPs. Robert Bursack is an effective, disciplined leader, and it just seems to work. They've got a good party machine there. They're well resourced. They've got a grassroots campaign. They're doing a really effective job in a way that I've never seen a minor party do before.
They pulled off a really good result. I mean, I was really, you know, I mean, I actually did expect it. You know, I mean, I was saying that the Shooters Party could even, you know, do more than what they did. You know, I mean, there's some seats that really, I mean, were close, but you know, free seats definitely. I knew Phil Donato was definitely going to, you know, get Orange back. I did mention that Barwin and Murray, that I thought that the Shooters were going to, you know, pull those seats, which they did. And I mean, you have to think of it this way. I mean, the Shooters having free seats in the lower house is the same amount of seats as the Greens.
Yeah.
That is huge, huge. You know, and I mean, the Shooters, at least in the upper house, though, only got 4.5%, I think it was, whereas the Greens, I think, pulled about 11%. So, I mean, the Greens getting, you know, a lot more votes, but the Shooters being able to take, you know, as many seats as the Greens did. And, you know, Christchurch, I think that helped them, because at the end of the day, it brought the gun issue up, and a lot of people saw the Christchurch massacre as a bit of a that a lot of political leaders would use this for mileage, and you know, like they did, brought about gun control in New Zealand. And I think this, in a way, kind of brought some bad memories up for these people. You know, with Howard back in the day doing the same thing. And I think it kind of made them think, well, this is the kind of things that, you know, are happening with major parties. They're trying to continually strip our rights away and our freedoms, and, you know, make it harder for farmers, you know, and all that sort of thing. And I think just having that as an issue to happen definitely helped them, rather than didn't help them, and it showed. And I mean, I think the major reason why they haven't had any internal turmoil, and this is very important here, the major reason is because they haven't based their party around a cult personality. That's why. Every other party, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, Bob Katter's Australia Party, you know, Corey Bernardi's Australian Conservatives, which, you know, he's basically a dictator of, you know, Fraser Anning's Conservative Nationals. Every other party is based around a leader. And when people see that, they don't take the party seriously. I mean, they don't like, you know, just having a party based around one person, because it doesn't make them feel like they're involved in it. That doesn't make them feel part of something. The Shooters, Fishers and Farmers aren't called the Robert Borsack's Shooters, Fishers and Farmers. And if it was, I don't think they would pull the same result, because people don't like that. You know, I mean, if you're a shooter, fisher or farmer, that's the party you vote for. And there's a hell of a lot of people in the bush that shoot, fish or farm. So really, at the end of the day, not to mention the absolute, you know, cuckiness of the Nationals, and you know, how far left they're going, especially on social issues and so forth. And they've got a lot of nerve to play down the issue and say, oh, you know, we still pulled a lot of seats, and, you know, we still perform well. But this is a start. I mean, this is the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers, really the first contested election that they really made an impact on. Now, when you look at the election in another 4 years' time, if they continue along like this, they're going to get more seats. Because as long as they don't have any stuff-ups, and they don't base the party around cult personalities, and, you know, stay true to their ideology, their principles, then I see in future elections they're building and becoming bigger and slowly eroding the Nationals' vote. I mean, the Nationals nearly lost Dubbo to an independent. And that was knife edge, you know, very knife edge.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have a recount I would say that would, go under a recount. But this is what I mean, and that's nearly. And what about Wagga? That was a national seat, and that's an independent. He won at a by-election, and he definitely gained it again.
There's been a lot of noting of the New South Wales Nationals Party lurch to the left, and of course we saw how they reacted when members of the Lad Society tried to join the New South Wales Young Nats. They were promptly expelled after the ABC did an expose, and I did notice a few of those lads on Saturday night sort of saying, maybe there's a lesson in there for the New South Wales National Party losing all those seats
100%.
to a more conservative party.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was definitely a lesson. I mean, when the Nationals did that, I wasn't surprised, but at the same time, I was very disgusted in it because you'd expect more from them. I mean, a rural party, you don't expect them to be the same sort of cuckiness that the Liberal Party in the city would be, I mean, you expect more from them. But, on the SSM issue, they were very progressive, very supportive of the change and in the Yes campaign. They obviously, it was a genius leader of the ex-Dubbo politician, Troy Grant, that wanted the greyhound industry to be banned. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, how is this a country party? I mean, really, it's a disaster of a party. I mean, they don't represent the bush. I mean, they really haven't seen themselves as separate from the Libs at all, and because of that, people have obviously voted, and they've paid the price for it. I mean, this is, like I said, they nearly lost Dubbo, they lost Wagga, they lost Barwon, they lost Murray, and again they lost Orange, and there's other independents along the coast as well. The Labor Party beat them in Upper Hunter, I believe, or is it a really nice edge result there?
I think they just got back in there, the National Party.
They just got back in, scraped in. Well, I'll tell you what, they won't get back in next time. I mean, if they continue like this, I mean, it takes more than one election to make an impact, and what the shooters have been able to do is remarkable. I mean, really, when you look at all elections in the past and what minor parties have done, it's very rare. I mean, fair enough, 98's Queensland result of One Nation where they got like a dozen MPs in. I mean, that's out of this world. You won't hear about that ever again, most likely. But apart from that, I mean, they pulled off a massive victory. I mean, they really should be considered a serious contender here. And, they could be the next country party, really. I mean, and, people have to take them serious. And if they do everything right, then next election down the road, they'll even perform better.
And the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, they have stated that they're going to contest seats at the federal election, and I would argue that they're in with a shot for the last New South Wales Senate seat. Obviously, it's a lot harder for minor parties with the new Senate voting system, but if they manage to do some preference deals with the other minor parties in the upper house, they got around 4.2%, so it's well short of the 14.3%. But if they pour a lot of resources at the Senate, then they could be in with a shot and get their first senator.
I think so as well. I think they're really in with a shot, considering that at the last federal election, at least, the Christian Democrats narrowly missed out, and this time around in the state election, they didn't do really too well. So I think, the Shooters have a really, really good shot at this, really good shot. And as long as they field enough candidates to cover most of the regional seats, and even, chuck some seats in the city. I mean, even if you're pulling 1-2% in the city, it doesn't really matter. It adds to the Senate result. So I would, if I was them, just field as many candidates as you can. And by doing that, I think they're really in with a shot. I mean, especially now that Lionhelm isn't there anymore with the LDP, so there's obviously going to be that seat or two that minor parties are going to be eyeing. So I think they're really in with a good chance, I think. Yep.
Well, let's look at the rest of the new crossbench in New South Wales. So Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party 3 in the lower house, Greens 3 in the lower house, and 3 independents. In the upper house, obviously the Shooters had no problem getting their upper house member re-elected. Only 9% of the vote is counted. The result won't be known for a couple of weeks, but Mark Latham with One Nation got more than a quota with 6.5%. The quota is 4.5. So Mark Latham is back as an elected politician, and the Liberal Democrats with David Linehelm as the lead candidate after he resigned from the Senate, he's projected to win a seat. The Liberal Democrats are sitting at around 3%. Now, Mark Latham was a Liberal Democrats member for quite a while, but obviously left to join and be a candidate with One Nation, and he had a pretty big spray at Linehelm, who said about Linehelm that he wanted the LDP to be all about him, and so that's why Latham could never be a serious candidate for that party. And Linehelm's responded by saying that, well, Mark Latham, he's joined the ultimate cult party in Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and it's a bit rich of him to accuse me of not being a libertarian when Mark doesn't like drugs or guns or gay marriage. And so they were both considered sort of anti-PC politicians, and so everyone was like, oh, Latham and Linehelm in the upper house, whoa, what a force. But no, there's been this war of words to begin with. I did not see it coming.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a big shame, to be honest. I mean, really, when you're in this position, and I've looked at the Senate sort of tally as it stands, and the left and right parties are pretty much even when it looks at seat numbers. And all you need is an issue like this, and if you have one person that doesn't vote on your side and that, you know, goes across to the crossbench, I mean, that can really do damage. I mean, when you've got a situation where you could possibly have, you know, 50-50 or thereabouts of right and left-wing parties, and you have contentious issues, very important issues, and there's not a good working relationship between these people, that's going to, you know, cause a lot of problems. I mean, and it's sad because this is the kind of bullshit that you always get on the right. I mean, you don't have this on the left, you know. I mean, people on the left, whether they like or hate each other, they work together because their position is that they want to destroy someone that is more of an enemy, you know. Like, I mean, the whole my enemy's enemy is my friend, you know. I mean, whether you like or hate the Greens and the Labor Party, you know, that they see each other as allies because they want to destroy people on the other side. And on the right, sometimes people get caught up in these, you know, personalities, and you know, it's very sad to see, and it really damages the right. And that's why we've got so many splinter parties, because everybody wants to be top dog, you know. I mean, Latham was never really a libertarian. I mean, everybody knew that. He definitely had that anti-PC sort of thing, like you mentioned, and that's why it looked like them two would get along well. But Latham, to me anyway, when he joined the LDP, I always thought to myself he should have joined One Nation, because his ideology, being an old school sort of Labourite, would have been perfect for One Nation. And it is, to be honest. I think he's pretty much spot on with One Nation. He's a bit of a cuck on guns and stuff, unfortunately. But apart from that, you know, he's pretty spot on to their kind of philosophy. In regards to quotas, one thing that has to be said is One Nation pulling 6.5%. I mean, that is huge. And One Nation wasn't prepared. I mean, one thing that I have to criticise One Nation about is that they only fielded about a dozen candidates in the whole state. And, you know, that's out of a lot of seats. They're only fielding a dozen candidates. I mean, if they had a candidate in every seat, you would have seen two guys in there, easy. Two guys in there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it sounds like
no problem.
They thought that they could just get a seat based on Mark Latham's name recognition, and so were probably saving more of their resources for the federal election, because they just knew that it'd be easy for Latham to get that quota, and so they get somebody in the New South Wales upper house, them there for 8 years, and then they can save up their war chest for the federal election.
That is true, but I think while you're in a position to perform well, I think you have to put it in. You can't really have this, we might just go easy and, save our war chest for other endeavours, because, like I said, I mean, One Nation would be a hell of a lot stronger if they had, they would have gotten easily two people in there. And you got to counter in that with preferences, they could get two people. They're definitely in for a shot of getting a second guy in there if the preferences go their way. But if they did field candidates everywhere, they would have got two. And then if their vote was high enough, they could have possibly had the third. And that would have made them a massive impact, massive party, a massive threat to anything that happened in the upper house. And it would have made a difference. I mean, it's great, yeah, Latham's in there, he's got the name. But considering that One Nation were able to pull such a high number of votes just based on using Mark Latham's profile, then, really they should have pushed harder, and they could have done so much better, because you don't know what holds in 4 years' time. I mean, things could go pear-shaped for them, and, unfortunately, then, they should have put more effort into this one. So while they could have, I really think they should have went harder. Federally, yeah, I think federally they'll be in it with a seat. I mean, I think that's a definite. But again, you've got so many minor parties to contest against. I mean, Palmer's just spending so much money. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of millions he's spending on billboards and advertising and everything. I mean, unfortunately, Palmer doesn't really have much of a, what does he stand for? Nobody knows, really. I mean, and if he was somebody that was serious about creating a One Nation style sort of party, you sort of patriotic kind of, party, far right, whatever you want to call them, with Clive Palmer's money, I mean, that would have been huge. But again, unfortunately, he has chosen to put so much effort into something that I don't think people will see much of. I mean, no one knows, what he stands for, and he hasn't really got any principled kind of plan. And it's a shame, because, he's got the financial aspect involved, but he hasn't got the important aspect, which is what he would do for the country,
Well, let's have a look at some of the other minor parties. The single issue Keep Sydney Open party did very well in both the lower and upper house. They're sitting at 2.9% in the upper house. They look like they'll win a seat. Now, obviously they're against the lockout laws. They're sort of seen as running on a libertarian platform, but they still want to use the state to give away lots of subsidies to the live music and entertainment industry, lots of sort of Kickstarter grants from government. So it's very sort of, there's a lot of crony capitalist stuff in there, and it does. They are seen as aligned with the Greens. I know the Greens criticise them for eating into their vote, which sort of tells you a bit. There's the Animal Justice Party. They got 2.3%. So they always seem to do very well. There's obviously a lot of animal activists in Australia. Sustainable Australia, they got 2%, which is for another single issue party. They're despite their name, they're another left-wing party. The Christian Democrats, they got 2.5%. They might just get there, retain their upper house seat.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'd say parties like Keep Sydney Open, I mean, if you had to compare it to something, it'd probably be Reason. It was more of a Lolbert sort of party. And don't get me wrong, like, you're going to agree with some things, you're going to disagree with other things. It might be better to have a party like that in rather than the Greens, though. So,
definitely.
If it chewed the Greens vote, I would be much happier to have a Keep Sydney Open than a Green candidate there. That's for sure. But in saying that, I think a party like Sustainable Australia wouldn't have been bad at all, because, I mean, at least they talk about the immigration issue. I mean, and, you know, issue with overpopulation. I mean, you know, so even though they don't get into the cultural aspect, they get into the economic aspect. They're a little bit more, you know, centre-based and, you know, soft. But nevertheless, they're still talking about the issue, you know, and it's something. It's at least something. Christian Democrats, yeah, fair enough. But the Christian Democrats candidate that they currently had wasn't really a what you would call a, I guess you could say, a hardcore kind of sort of, you know, candidate. I mean, he was, a lot of people within the party said that he was basically, you know, a liberal shill. So if that was the case, I mean, it obviously showed that a lot of people maybe chose other conservative parties over the Christian Democrats because of it. Because when you're voting for someone like the Christian Democrats, you're obviously wanting someone that's really hardcore on social issues. And if he's just sort of a, you know, I guess, Bernardi sort of guy, you know, that kind of sort of style, then that to a lot of people might not be good enough. Another thing is, obviously, we're going to have to bring up the Auscons.
Yeah, they had an appalling result, 0.6% in the upper house.
Yeah, I was expecting this. I really think that they're a party that are on their way out. I mean, a lot of people are saying this, even within the party themselves have PM'd me about this. And I saw it coming because the Auscons don't really offer something different. There was a situation where one of the candidates, Ben Irwan, did talk about chemical castration of pedophiles, and I thought that was something that was good to mention, that was something that was fresh. But at the end of the day, the party in itself, how is it any different to the Liberal Party, really? I mean, it's not providing that difference that people look at it and say, okay, they're slightly better than the Liberals, but they're not good enough. I mean, when you have other parties on the right to compare them with that are fighting against them, why would you put a one preference next to the Conservatives, you know, when there's other parties that are best representing what people are thinking? You know?
Very safe party. I mean, Bernardi, when he was in the Liberal Party, had a reputation for being outspoken, but he just sort of appears on, you know, Sky News every week, says the sort of standard conservative talking points. If you want, you know, somebody who's going to rock the boat, be outrageous, you'll go to Hanson or Anning. I mean, if you're wanting a more conservative Liberal, then, you know, vote for somebody like Jim Molan below the line.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's so many candidates to choose from, so many minor parties to choose from. And Bernardi was somebody that was smart enough, that had the character. He could have done that. I mean, like I said to you before, I mean, he could have been the Anning. He could have been him, but he chose to play it safe and not. Why? I mean, why did he do this? What was his purpose of creating the Conservative Party when he wasn't willing to push ahead on anything different than the Liberals would normally be on? I mean, you can't just create a party and say, okay, we're going to be a little bit more supportive on the conservative social issues. We won't go too hard on the climate change issue. We'll be a little bit, you know, more against that. But you got to read the crowd now. I mean, people on the right, I mean, are getting into the nationalistic side of things. Ever since Trump and everything happened on that field, that's where it is, you know. I mean, if you want to be noticed as something different to the normal centre-right party, the Liberals, then that's the kind of path you have to take. And if he continues to want to push the Liberal tagline and just do it under his own party just because he wants to be the leader of it, I mean, that's just showing why he's there and why he done it. It wasn't because of making any changes. He just wanted to be the leader of the Liberals, really. And apart from that, he didn't spend any money in the campaign. I mean, he gave nothing to the New South Wales cause. They pulled in a lot of hard effort. You got to give it to them. But at the end of the day, the message isn't tapping into the electorate. So no matter what he does, the party's done, as far as I'm concerned. And it's only a matter of time when he faces election. I don't think he'll get in again. And he might rejoin the Liberals. A lot of people
there was a Spectator article about that.
Yeah. a lot of people are telling me that that's what he plans to do. And I mean, how much of a cuck is he going to look when he does that?
Yeah, and would the Liberals have him back, do you think? They might just say, well, considering that you started this rival party to eat into our base and sort of against us, like, they'd probably say thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that would be the case. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a talented guy. I mean, he has a lot to offer, but I mean, he's shown to be a career politician. I mean, you heard someone like Anning not long ago say that he couldn't care less if he got booted at the election. I mean, you don't hear that from most pollies. Most pollies, they're there to get re-elected, you know. For someone to come out and tell it how it is and say what they think and say they don't care if people vote him out, I mean, that's unheard of. You know, you don't have that. And that's what people should be doing. You know, people should be there to make a right change and actually push forward with, you know, principles and not care about their careers. You know, if they lose their job tomorrow, they can look back and say, you know what, people are going to remember me as someone that tried, you know, and that's where the respect is. And that's why Bernardi and others aren't doing well, and that's why they're dying, you know, because people want a clear alternative from the major parties, not someone that's just going to be a little bit to the right or a little bit of a lighter sort of cuckiness. No, they want the real deal. They're sick of this sort of, you know, this sort of politics, you know, that has happening for years. You know, they want to change, and that's why you're going to have the more radical sort of parties get the votes. I mean, that's where it is. And we've seen it, One Nation, the Shooters, you know. I mean, they performed really well, and they've got a more right-leaning agenda, you know, and people are attracted to that.
Well, 1 in 4 voters in New South Wales voted for a party other than Liberal, Labor, National or Green. So it's going to be a fascinating upper house in New South Wales. The minor parties, obviously some are doing a better job than others, but it's always great to see that there's this alternative for voters and that they don't listen to the hacks and, you know, alleged conservative commentators on TV who say, oh, don't vote for a minor party.
100%, and I really hope that federal elections going to rise, and in the elections to come, that people are going to wake up to themselves and get out of this duopoly that we currently have with the major parties, you know, or triopoly with the Greens, I guess you could say. It's just ridiculous. I mean, they don't represent the average voter. They're just they're in it for themselves, you know. I mean, they're really people have to wake up to themselves. One thing that really irks me, that upsets me, is that people are so tribal, still so tribal when it comes to voting. They'll come out and say, oh, who are you voting for? And the other guy will say, oh, you know, I'm voting for Labor. Why are you voting for Labor? Oh, because, you know, my dad voted Labor, my grandfather voted Labor, you know, my great-grandfather was a miner. I mean, forget about that, mate. That was like, you know, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. You have to wake up to yourself. You have to look at the issues of today. I mean, I know a lot of old people, especially ethnic old people, that are Labor voters, of course, right? Because they're told that they're the sort of party that, you know, are for the working man. And these are socially conservative, you know, ethnic voters, which obviously proved to be the case in Western Sydney with the SSM vote. And they vote for Labor because they're the working man party. But Labor is pushing, you know, green agendas that are directly in conflict with their values, but they don't know any better. This is the thing. I mean, really, to be honest, the boomers are going to be the last fools to be out of the way. I mean, once the boomers are out of the picture, I think younger people are going to be more connected with what's going on today. I don't think they're going to be as tribal as, you know, the people of previous generations. I think they're going to be looking at, okay, what is happening today? What do these parties stand for? You know, I mean, with the boomers, they keep thinking of Whitlam giving away free shit. I mean, this is, you know, unfortunately, this is what it is, you know. I mean, you know, and people have to move away from that and look at what it is today, you know, because if you keep on looking at what it used to be, I mean, the Labor Party used to believe in the White Australia policy only 50 years ago. I mean, you know, it's changed a lot since then, you know. So, I mean, this is why people have to really You know, if the parties change, you have to change. You can't continue voting on the same pattern. And safe seats. Anyone in a safe seat, just vote the other way. Make the seat marginal, because as long as your seat is safe, you're not going to have any money pumped into it. Nobody's going to care about you at all. And that's how it's going to be, you know? I mean, make your seat a marginal seat. Anyone that has a seat, especially in the 70% range of two-party preferred, I mean, when I look at that, I think to myself, whether it be Labor or Liberal, I think these people are just fools, you know? I mean, having a safe seat that high, I think is bad. I really think it's bad for the system. I think it's bad for the voters. And it just shows you how stupid people are, really. I mean, and it's very unfortunate, because if people really wanted these politicians to start doing things for them and doing things for their communities, they have to say, well, let's vote another way. Let's get this seat marginal. Let's start to get funding and input into our communities and get this community, you know, built, get things happening, and not get ignored, because that's all they're doing. They're getting ignored. Nobody takes notice of them because they're in a major seat. They know they're going to win, and the party that is on the losing end know they've got no chance of winning, so nobody cares about them, you know? So that's just, I mean, that's just a personal experience of me being in a very, very safe Labor area. So, but whether it's Labor or Liberal, if you're in a really safe area, you really start to get sick of people being tribal and voting the same way. You want to change, you know? You just want a bit of balance, that's all.
Well, New South Wales was just the entree for elections this year. The federal election is probably due to be called next week, and so that will certainly be a bigger shaper of Australian politics in the years to come. So thank you for joining me today, Damien, to wrap up the New South Wales election, and we'll keep chatting, I hope, on a more regular basis in this time slot.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Tim.
And that's the show for today. The first episode of The Uncockables, a new live show which is a joint production of The Unshackled XYZ and The Rational Rise, was a great success. Thank you to everyone who watched and interacted. I'm pleased to confirm that we'll be back for another show this Thursday at around 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Myself, David Hiscock, and James Fox Higgins will be on the panel to discuss the major developments of the week to come. So make sure you subscribe to the dedicated Uncockables YouTube channel to make sure you're notified when we go live. As we reported last Tuesday, Facebook permanently banned Tom Sewell, Neil Erickson, Ricky Turner and the Lads Society, claiming they violated its policy against dangerous people. Then on Thursday, Facebook announced it was banning the promotion of white nationalism and separatism on their platform starting next week. We shall see if we survive Facebook's next level purge. However, we have a growing following on Gab.ai and have just launched a MeWe page, and we also have a presence on Minds.com. We also have our video library at BitChute.com. However, that is being blocked by many Australian ISPs for hosting the Christchurch shooting videos. So follow us on these free speech social media alternatives to make sure you can still be notified when we have new content up. As the tech giants in partnership with our government do their best to shackle us, it is more important than ever to support us financially. You can pledge over at patreon.com/theunshackled and directly via paypal.me/theunshackled. We also have our premium membership option on our website, theunshackled.net/support options/premium membership. And thank you to all our new financial supporters. It helps us out greatly. And also don't go anywhere, as it is Monday night. XYZ Live with Maddie Rose and David Hiscock is coming up on YouTube at 9:15 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So thanks once again for your company, and we'll see you next show.
Thanks for tuning in to The Unshackled Waves. Please visit theunshackledwaves.net for all the ways to subscribe and follow the show. Don't forget to pick up your free ebook at theunshackledbattlefield.net and keep checking out theunshackled.net for all the latest news and commentary.